Welcome to Breaking Good, the officially unofficial podcast for Breaking Bad on AMC. I'm Jim.
And I'm Aaron.
And today we are discussing the Series 2 finale series. What am I, British? The Season 2 finale, Episode 13, entitled ABQ. This is also known as the one that Aaron has a massive problem with.
The Aaron's Waterloo.
Yeah. We will talk, I'm sure, in depth about that. If you haven't picked it up, let's talk a little bit about the episode titles up front, yeah?
So if you think back of all the episodes, they began with the black and white teddy bear footage in the pool, the body bags and all that, the broken glass, the broken eyeglasses. They are 4 episodes, and they form a sequence of words that say 737 down over ABQ. This Wayfarer collision was between a 737 and some other aircraft. There might have been 2 737s. I think we get a definitive answer. Not too much of a spoiler, but we hear a news report early in the next season that tells us exactly the details about, the aircraft involved. But no one, I was confident in my research. No one at the time called that. And I will say that Villigan did a masterful job of hiding the meaning of the titles in plain sight.
Yeah.
Because every single one of them, 737, it was Walt talking about 737,000. Down, it was like the literal down point in their career. Over, it was him grappling whether he was out of the drug. I mean, every one of them. And then ABQ, it's Albuquerque, so no one suspected.
Yeah.
I would argue that part of that is because this is a massive bait and switch.
Oh, you want to just jump right into it, huh?
So here's the thing. Season 2 is incredibly strong. I have walked away with a much I'm no longer afraid to rewatch season 2 because it's very rewatchable. This episode is really incredibly strong with a lot of solid emotional material. I was misty-eyed at least 2, maybe 3, I can't remember, 3
Jesse
scenes.
and Skylar, yeah?
Jesse and Skylar.
Not together. Those couple of scenes.
Yeah.
Jesse in the flop house, Skylar at the end.
And Jesse trying to desperately resuscitate Jane. Honestly,
Donald Margulies going into the house.
And going through and trying to pick out a dress for his daughter. Some devastating stuff to the point where I felt like the plane crash is if you take the black and white sequences and the plane crash out of Breaking Bad, nothing in the story changes. It's not like these plane crash echoes down through the annals of Breaking Bad. I hope that's not a spoiler, but if it is, I'm going to reassure you that this is not a giant, meaningful watershed event in Breaking Bad history. And I was more surprised because I did some reading into critical reviews, and it doesn't seem like a lot of the critics. Alan Sepinwall might have had the biggest, but he was speaking of a hypothetical third-person fan that would be disappointed that this was the resolution of all those black and white footages and the double body bags. And
he was talking about you.
He was talking about me, the theoretical Aaron that did in fact exist. And Vince Gilligan basically put on a troll face and said, "Oh well, because I read like an interview with him with Sepinwall where he asked him about that in different angles, and I didn't find his answers convincing, but then again, I'm on the side that wouldn't. So we'll talk more about that, but I feel like if you take out those openings that I think are grossly misleading and invited people to have the wrong opinion on stuff, and you take out the plane crash itself, although I was also more surprised at how technically well done it was. I remember part of me, of course, I was just, when I saw the plane crash happening and realized that that's what it was. And I think I was kind of preemptively pissed off when I saw the van pull away at the beginning when it goes from black and white to color and it says NTSB. And I'm like, wait a second, a plane crash? And when I saw it unfolding, I was just incredulous. I remember thinking the effects work was kind of jank. But seeing it in crystal clear high def, it looks really, really like I would expect this thing to look like.
Yeah, and they did some really interesting stuff with, Teddy Bear Cam and
yes,
all that stuff that I liked a lot.
Yes, they did. They really went for broke on this. And one thing that I think is the best theory, I saw this on Reddit, is because there's a person ranting and raving, kind of like me, about like this doesn't make sense. And if you put this in context of a show that was struggling to get 1 million people to watch it, and Vince wasn't sure if he would get another season. If you try to view this as a finale, a series finale, something that's like wraps up thing and makes a statement, I think the plane crash works a little bit better as like an exclamation part. Like Walt apparently has escaped judgment. He's beat the cancer. He's got the money.
He doesn't have his family, though. His
But
family
that's
just
it.
left him.
His family has been ripped away, and then literal fire from heaven rains down on him. I kind of could get behind that thematically. As it is, as we know what Breaking Bad goes on to be, it just is annoyance to me.
I don't know where you're going with the fire from heaven. It ties in a little bit with what the Villigan has said about the bear, which we'll get to. But I see it like I buy the argument that this is a reflection of the devastation that he is bringing to people's lives.
Oh, in his post-mortem, he said that he intended it to be interpreted as like a act of God, a vengeful God taking vengeance upon Walter White.
Well, then he has since changed his opinion in interviews, because I have a choice quote from him at the very end of this.
Okay.
Which we'll talk about.
Maybe it could be because Sepinwall led him into that question. I will say that, because he said,
really?
Yeah, he mentioned the act of God. And then Vince was kind of, and I don't know, we talked about him being a kind of a nice guy. Sometimes
he doesn't want to shit on his.
It just maybe it's like he's just going to go like, okay, sure. So I'm just saying God
is still mixed up in his ideas of what happened at the end, but
okay,
it doesn't seem that there is a purpose there.
So, like I said, if Breaking Bad was going to be canceled and they wanted something that was kind of a satisfying bookend that would leave people stunned and not necessarily really cliffhangers, that kind of works for me.
I wonder if that in any way affected what happens with him and Skylar too, and kind of pushed them into her leaving.
I don't know. I do think that in that light, there was certainly some bad taste in my mouth going into season 3. And we'll probably talk about more of that in season 3, but I'm going to kind of talk about my problems with the early goings of Breaking Bad. Like Breaking Bad was, I thought, in danger of becoming this show built on just far out coincidences.
Jumping the shark.
Yeah, like they've lost sight of and it turns out they weren't. But I feel like I might, now that I've kind of made peace with this plane crash, when I go and we eventually get to the season 3 rewatch, which we don't have an exact date yet.
No promises. We're leaning towards doing it.
No, I mean,
I think we both want to clean out the rest of this house here.
I'm pretty sure we're doing it. We do not. I mean, from here till the end of May, we are booked solid.
Yeah. It's not happening anytime soon.
And we don't even know at then, like, it wouldn't be surprised to me if True Detective was hitting about then. Fargo and the left. So if we get another 3 or 4 show lineup, then it's just going to keep getting slipped. But it is something we want to come back to.
Yeah. Why don't you tell us about who made this episode?
Sure, you just want me to bitch and whine about the plane crash more?
No, not yet. We'll get to that.
This is directed by Adam Bernstein, which we talked about before. He is married to the actress that plays Gretchen in Breaking Bad. And he is a multiple Primetime Emmy nominee, most recently for directing the Crocodile's Dilemma episode of Fargo.
Huh, okay.
He won a Primetime Emmy for directing 30 Rock. And he's done just a ton of work on Breaking Bad, House of Lies. He directed the upcoming episode of Better Call Saul, Jello, Nurse Jackie, Masters of Sex, Californication. We talked about Fargo.
Wow.
Just tons. He has been doing a lot of good stuff. Shameless, Weeds.
The movie?
No. The Showtime
I was
series.
thinking the Shia LaBeouf movie.
Wait.
Yeah,
what?
wasn't it called Shameless?
I thought.
Didn't he do like a Western outlaw sort of?
Oh, maybe he
thing?
did. I was thinking of Shame, which was the Michael Aspender sex addict movie.
No. He was not in that.
I don't want to see Shia LaBeouf in a sex addict movie.
Uh-uh.
But he's a very accomplished director, and it was written by none other than Vince Gilligan,
Okay,
who needs no introduction.
that works. I think Vince does a fine job in his writing.
Have another breakfast update, which we'll get to.
Yeah.
We're now up to not 7 breakfasts consumed out of 9 offered.
You're slipping, Junior.
Junior could not.
I'm sorry, Flynn.
Flynn could.
He won't answer to that.
Flynn could not avoid the call of the almighty dollar.
Nope.
He's like his dad. Those dollar bills are calling. He can't.
All right. Let's take it from the top. Yeah.
The tubes are lined with gold, just waiting to be picked up.
They are, apparently. All right. Let's start out with the black and white scene here.
That goddamn pink bear.
Yeah, it's everywhere, man. Its eyes are being sucked into pool filters. It's falling from the sky this episode. It's landing in his pool. There's more of the body bags, more evidence, and then we pull out to see, this is a big scene here.
Yeah,
lots of officials, lots of trucks. There's helicopters in the sky, explosions off in the distance. There's a lot of shit going down here.
Yep. And at this point, when it pans up slowly to see the NTSB van pulling away from the twin plumes of smoke, is about when Aaron 5 years ago got a massive stink face on. Like, what? What?
So this is probably reaching, and
Okay.
I don't like to do this often, except when it comes to coffee. But there's a scene here where they pull the bear out of the pool in the net.
Sure.
And they drag it kind of the net gets swooped across the pavement and right toward Walter White's chair where he always sits and meditates.
Okay.
And the entire time it's dripping water onto this pavement, which in black and white looks kind of like blood.
Sure.
I wonder if that was on purpose.
Oh, I would bet. I would imagine.
Okay. Fair enough. Jesse's doing chest compressions on Jane's dead body. We think he might be humping something at first.
That's the thing.
That's a little weird.
When I started watching this and I saw the, clearly underside and
yeah, like inside the bed cam. That was pretty cool.
Do you think, did it feel somehow inappropriate to you?
Oh yeah.
I felt calling inappropriate on this one.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't know that that's what you want to do. Like, but
it's one of those things where like maybe Vince Gilligan is making a joke, or maybe he's doing it to kind of shame you a little bit. Like, shame on you for thinking that. You should know what's happening here. It just happened at the end of last episode. Why are you thinking that? You dirty,
that's like
dirty
joke
minded.
When you ask somebody, the spell spot and the spell slop and the spell mop, and then what do you do at a green light and stop? No, you idiot,
Sure.
You go. It's like when you use the language of cinema in a certain way and a certain sound effects, then you can't make us feel guilty for thinking that. But no, I was like, but the moment still hit because Aaron Paul went for it.
Yeah. Aaron Paul does a great job in this episode.
It really made me feel for this junkie girlfriend who I was hating last episode, but I didn't
feel for her. I didn't feel for her at all. I felt for him because he had just lost something.
Yeah, but I'm saying yes, but there was none. There was absolutely zero. Good. I'm glad you're dead. It was all, my God, I'm feeling bad for Jesse. That's hard to do because those are intertwined. Like, I wasn't thinking you dodged a bullet or she was a terrible person, because that's the other thing is I don't think
you kind of were last episode, right?
I don't think she was a terrible person.
No.
That's the thing that I've really come to appreciate watching this again, is that Jane's not a bad person, and Jane probably had Jesse's a better handle on what's good for Jesse than Jesse did, because she smoked out that Walt was abusive and no good for him, and Jane's worst crime is she enabled him at his low point. And herself. But anyway, it was bad. It was just him sobbing and pleading, and watching him go through the first few stages of grief is just so good.
Yeah.
This episode is such really a lot of emotional gut punches.
Yeah, it is a real ball breaker with a a heartbreaker, you know.
Mhm.
It's rough all the way through. Anyway, so Jesse calls up Walt to tell him about Jane, which of course he already knows. He tells him, sit tight, I know who to call.
Which
who do you call when your girlfriend dies, or when your partner's girlfriend dies?
well, Saul Goodman. You better call Saul. I know who to call. He's been watching the commercials.
I noticed Walt has his cell phone on silent now. Smart, Walt. Smart.
I also liked the imagery of Walt holding Holly. It's the, you know, contrast between fathers and daughters, and he is very fatherly.
Jesse's loss and his gain. Like, he's just gained a family member. Jesse just lost the only person he cares about.
And like I said, I think that Walt was playing this very fatherly, you know, like this is you got a phone call from your son or daughter at 2 o'clock in the morning and they're at a party and it's turned sketchy, and you can, you know, they're calling you against their better judgments, and you know, you're just wanting to be reassuring. And apparently also you send Mr. Wolf from Pulp Fiction to deal with the situation.
A much less conspicuous version of Mr. Wolf, right? He doesn't pull up in the Lamborghini.
No, he doesn't. He pulls up in like a massive Lincoln or Caddy.
Something like that. Yeah, I think it's a big old Lincoln of some kind. Yeah. He get some dude in sunglasses pulls up. He's obviously sent by Saul. He says so. He cleans up all the drugs. He tells Jesse exactly how to handle the situation. And then he's out, as any good wolf would do.
Yep.
In and out.
He's also very abrupt. He doesn't have time for people sobbing or carrying on. He will
smack you across the face.
He will smack the taste right out of that mouth if it's what you need to get through this. He has a practice line. I woke up and found her. That's all I know.
Yeah, Mike tells him to say, I woke up like this.
No,
he doesn't.
Do you think that, and he gave a lot of practical advice, put on some long sleeve shirt to cover the track marks?
Yes.
I never thought this the first time through, but when I was watching this, I'm like, does that I woke up and found her, that's all I know, does that really stand up to an investigation? Like, who is this woman? I woke up and found her, that's all I know.
You know, if they talk to Donald, probably not.
There is a break. There's an obvious break-in. Is this connected? I just woke up. Did you know she was on drugs? I just woke up. I mean, I guess you could say that. That's kind of what you're supposed to do with police.
Yeah, and then he says, you know, if the police show up, ask for your lawyer.
Because he also wasn't also dealing with police. That's the other thing.
Yeah, he was dealing with some medical examiners.
Right.
Not nearly the threat there.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know enough about the inner workings of police and medical examiners and all that, but I was a little suspicious about whether it would be that easy to get out of this thing. Although, you know, you could stick if the point that this gentleman, this Wolf guy makes at a larger point was, if you do get hauled into the cops, just don't say anything and talk to a lawyer, because that's the thing.
Yeah.
They might suspect, you might be suspicious as hell, you might be under some tough questioning, but they don't got shit.
Yep. They have nothing. Mike took it all. The cleaner took it all.
So there you go.
The cleaner whose name may or may not be Mike.
This podcast needs to be cleaned now.
I don't think it's a spoiler to say the guy's name. So why does he take Jane's belt? I understand it's the one that they used to shoot up with, but it's a fucking belt. It's a belt. Did he take his clothing? It's
interesting because I thought that there was I wondered the same thing as I was going around watching him, like, you know, what he was dusting and what he wasn't dusting, and how it's kind of seems like it's obviously that he was cleaning some things and not others. And I thought that he did a pretty good job of portraying, like, he picked up the belt and kind of hesitated, like, you know, throw it in, like, you know, like, just be go overboard on the side of caution. But I think it's just because it was drug paraphernalia and he wanted to get all of that out of the house.
Yeah. I mean, if it was like rubber tubing, maybe I understand why he takes it. But
sure.
Anyway, Walt's making breakfast the next morning, or that morning. I don't know exactly when.
I think it's the same morning.
Same morning. Okay. Which is, you know, better known as cereal. Not a great breakfast from Walt there, which might be why he gets turned down by Junior. And also, he's more concerned with the money being donated through his website, which is obviously bothersome to Walt. I mean, you can see it here. You can see it way better later on.
Really?
Yeah.
I took this scene as him being a little bit more at peace with it. And he it's like, okay, my son's having this moment. Look how excited he is. Look how excited my wife is. I'm going to, even though I myself do not like this and I'm comfortable with it, as a dad, I'm getting some pleasure out of them. That's how I got it. He was much less pissier about it at this point. Now there's a point where
he's getting used to the idea, but
there's a point where that turns around for him,
yes.
and I've got an idea of why that is.
Okay.
But I think at this point, he's kind of like, okay, well, this isn't so bad. If my son ends up saving me financially, that's not a terrible thing.
Is this the only time that Walt calls Junior Flynn?
I don't know.
I think it might be. I can't think of another time when he calls him Flynn.
I thought he has to break down and do it later on as well. I don't know.
Maybe.
Who knows? Is that a spoiler?
No.
The fact that we don't know, it can't be a spoiler, right?
We have no information on this.
Somehow we flashed our memory on this.
But it was notable that he actually called him Flynn here, because he has been very resistant to that name.
As I imagine, if you're the type of guy that would name a kid after yourself, we talked about that kind of particular brand of benign megalomania.
Yeah.
That's naming your kid after yourself. If you're the type of person that would roll that way, I imagine it's a huge slap in the face for them to then reject it.
Sure. It feels weird when I hear people calling him Flynn, though.
Oh, hell yeah.
Even to me, and I have no investment in this. I don't care. But when Skylar calls him Flynn, it's a very strange thing to me.
Sure. Yeah.
And I don't know why they're so on board with it. I guess because, if the kid wants to change his name, let him change his name.
That's the thing, man. You gotta pick your battles. Like, if you want a kid to get really involved in doing something, it seems like tell them that he can't do it or make fun of it or discourage it. That's the way you really harden their position, where it's like, okay, fine, Flynn.
Sure.
We'll go with Flynn. Flynn's a ridiculous name. We'll go with it. That's the way you beat him down.
All right.
Reverse psychology.
Jane's dad gets a call. He calls Jane. She doesn't answer. And then when he gets to her house, he finds, the paramedics hauling her corpse away. That's no good. It's not what you want to see. I do like the cliffhanger cut here, where he pulls up, he sees the paramedics, and then you can tell it goes to commercial.
Sure.
But I was watching it on Netflix, so it didn't.
And also the paramedics are like, sir, you might not want to be here for this. They give him like a half a second to turn away. And it's like, all right, bag her up, boys. Bag her up,
Yeah.
Put her into the meat rending facility. It's like, come on.
She a donor? Let's cut her out now.
That's right.
I need kidneys. I need lungs. Bring it on.
Can you pull out her eyes first? We got a cornea transplant scheduled for this afternoon.
Sure, just pop him out.
And he's just sitting there biting his knuckle. I just thought it's like, just give a grieving father a second to process your suggestion.
Yeah.
Would you?
Yeah, he might have not even heard you. Like, he might have been so zoned out.
Right.
He didn't even
he's
hear
just
it.
hearing,
there is a literal knuckle bite in this episode. Jesse does it.
Oh, does he do a knuckle biter?
Yeah. He's so grief stricken that he bites his finger in the most cliched way possible.
Sometimes you gotta bite the bullet knuckle.
I guess so.
The knuckle bullet.
This is brutal. When they're asking him, they're in the living room and they're asking questions, and
so good.
They eventually leave, but like just Jesse's standing there in front of her dad.
And the realization
there, and they all know what happened here.
Yeah, but the thing that really makes it tragic is they assume that Jesse knows the first thing about Jane, and we're realizing in real time with Jane's, it's like he doesn't know her birth date, doesn't know her mother's name.
Okay.
Like they're going to Jesse for this because this happened in your house. This must be someone important to you, and she was.
Mm-hmm.
But here's the man who brought her into this world and knows all this information and has spent all this time and effort and grief to try to get her back on this track where, she can have a healthy life. And the man that destroyed it all
standing right
doesn't even really know her, or knows her at this very surface level, but yet is still emotionally devastated. I thought that was really interesting. And Jesse's outward grief versus Donald's just haunted
for very good reason. I mean, he left his daughter with this guy,
right,
with the intention of the very next morning taking her to get help.
Yeah, and one day,
and the idea that she, that he was ready to pull her out of that house. he let her talk him into that, and then it caused this. This is what happened.
The guilt he must feel for not, for being soft that one last time.
Yes, it's devastating.
This guy, and the fact he just walks out without even looking at Jesse, like I think Jesse would have loved it if he'd taken the baseball bat and beat his brains in.
I think you're right.
And the fact that he didn't is like the worst.
Yeah,
from Jesse's point of view.
Yeah, he just couldn't. He was too out of it.
And like him finding the apology girl and like what that must have, and Jesse seeing him find it.
Yeah.
And then, will you both be coming to the hospital? And of course, Jesse, it's like just really gut wrenching, man. It's terrible. Terrible.
Yeah. Great scene. More donations are coming in through the website. Walt's in the bathroom trying to call Jesse, and Skylar and Flynn are just watching the site, watching the donations roll in.
What we've been doing the last day or two.
Yep. Could you please
another club ball move?
Please start calling me Flynn. I don't, this gym thing, I'm not feeling it.
Flim. I can call you Flim. I'll meet you halfway.
All right. Hank's introducing a donation jar for Walt's surgery.
Oh, so who did Walt call there? I'm assuming he's trying to, okay, because the way he was saying my friend and all this, I just realized he could be talking to Saul or Jesse.
Oh, I read Jesse.
Okay, me too. Me too. But I thought it was like open for debate.
All right. Well, I'm not here to debate it because that's what I think.
All right.
Yeah, so Hank's passing around a donation jar for Walt's surgery at work, and his beer is the prize. No one seems to like that. Is Schrader Brow bad? You think Schrader Brow's pretty gross? Or do you think Gomey's just busting his balls?
Well, here's the thing. If you are not experienced with craft beer, and you're just like a Coors Light man, which I have seen, that's like up until about 5 years ago, that was me. Schrader Brow's got to be the worst. Hoppy, dank smelling crap. Okay. But I don't know. I mean, I don't know. It's the beer can be really, really bad sometimes.
He's got a decent setup, but he's also got a lot of material things. So I could buy that this might be like Hank's third batch or something.
Here's the other thing.
Bought the bottling machine and all the bottles, and
I think Hank is a meticulous guy, and if his beer was disgusting, he would be embarrassed and ashamed, and he would never mention it to anybody.
You think so?
He would not be bringing Schrader Brow to every party. He would not. No, I mean, do you think that he?
Or do you think he's oblivious and he's just super proud of the thing he's done?
The man smokes Cuban cigars and drinks high-end booze. I think he knows what tastes good.
Okay,
is the thing, and I don't think that he would deliberately his outer image of being this guy, this consummate guy. If he was making bad beer, he wouldn't be able to handle it.
All right. I can buy that.
That's my greater Schrader Brow theory.
So then he goes over kind of the latest info on the blue stuff. He's not buying the James Kilkelly story, not one bit.
Nope.
And instead he pulls out a map that shows, all the blue stuff has been everywhere but New Mexico. So he thinks this Heisenberg guy who's still out there wised up and he's gone regional.
Stop shitting where he eats.
And we kind of know a good chunk of that story. We know that is not the case. He has a new distributor. He's just producing meth for this guy, or he produced a giant batch of it that he's selling. There's an interesting shot in here, a little, just a little fun thing where he's saying, why is it that the purest meth we've seen is being slung by that? And he points over at Combo because he's a no-name guy.
Right.
And then you can see Walt's face go by on the donation jar in the foreground.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool.
He's slipping right through.
Yeah. And Mustache Man shows up in this scene too.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's the guy's got some facial hair.
He's making up for the lack of Sam Elliott on Justified.
Yes.
He's doubled a mustache. The cosmically balanced Sam Elliott's clean upper lip.
Yep. The family's eating a meal. Not breakfast. I don't think so anyway. There's like broccoli and
this is still the same day.
Yeah.
So no, it can't be.
Maybe lunch, maybe an early dinner. I don't know. They're watching the donations rack up on the laptop. And they still got that thing going. Walt doesn't like seeing it really, so he goes out there and calls Saul, and Saul has found Jesse. Tells him where he is.
How long would it take to launder $700,000 at let's say this $2,800 rolled in 6 hours.
Well, do the math.
They did the math. That's what this segment is about. So what I say, it's at $720,000, right?
Something like that.
And then to divide that by 2,800, right? So that gives 257 time units that I said, just like a conservative estimate, that's took 6 hours to earn. That's 1,542 hours.
I think the numbers
that's
are
64
all off
days. That's actually not bad.
That's
actually not bad. That's doable.
So the amount of money that he gives Jesse is somewhere in the 400,000 range, and I think that factors in Saul's cut.
Right. No, I'm trying to be like worst case scenario, and I'm like,
oh, okay.
It seems 60 days is about how, like, that's like, and it's not.
Look at Kickstarter projects.
That's exactly
to get
what I
millions
was
of
saying.
dollars, right?
Like it's a 3, 2, or 1 month usually type deal, so it's like that's right in the middle, and that that's about right.
This donation site made by a kid goes viral, and
yeah,
boom, you got $1 million in donations.
Yeah. Because at first I was like, man, this is comically slow. Like the launder this is going to take just so much freaking time. But yeah, if you talk, it's only Walt's half, and then you only have Saul's going to take his cut out of it. Then you could get that done in 45 days or so. It's not bad. Imagine if they had let this happen, continue. Like, do you imagine like in an alternate universe where Walt Jr. raised like $400,000 for his dad cancer? That's that's legitimately a heartwarming story.
Sure.
That would make it. That would make national news.
Yeah, I think so. And he could have maybe passed that off as the reason why he paid off all these bills, and Skyler would have been none the wiser. Fortunately, the series of events did not work out that way.
That's right. That's right. If only they hadn't relaxed him at the hospital.
It would have been only. It would have been weird if he found a way to launder the money, and then he had to still pretend to his family that he had no money, because that money needed to go to his cancer treatment.
Oh no!
But he had already paid.
Can you imagine? Because some of that money he wanted to go to his kid's college fund, and they're like, "Okay, well, the surgery's only $150,000, so we need to donate the rest of this charity. Like, we can't just hold on." And Walt's is sitting there like twisting his nuts, like, ah. I mean, that's exactly what they would have done. Like Walt Jr. and Skyler would be like, we need to start a Walter White Foundation where we give this money to other people to have cancer. That's exactly what they would have done, and it would have driven him to an early grave.
Sure. And then every dollar he makes coming in, he'd have to just donate. Which,
although Saul would have found a way
on him, because he's doing a lot more harm than $400,000 worth.
Saul would have found a way to flip that cancer charity into the biggest money laundering scheme.
He would start the charity.
Yeah, he would.
Some charity set up in American Samoa.
Oh yeah.
He would be piped. Of course, he would take his cut again.
That would be bouncing off of multiple shores. Sure. Yeah.
So Walt goes to the flop house, along with the cleaner, the wolf.
Flophouse is selling this place short. This is like a series of flop houses surrounded in some flop compound.
You're right. It's like a fenced-in flop pound.
This is a militarized flopping zone. You are deeply committed to the flopping cause.
Flopping lifestyle.
You have to have a passport. Your papers have to be in order.
I've got the latest reality TV show, Floppers. Just bust into flop houses, set up fake flop houses, whatever you want to do. I know how they do that. Or you can have it where they go in, they kick people out of flop houses, renovate them, and sell them.
Ooh, call it flop flippers. Flipping floppers.
Flip flopper.
Flip floppers. Boom. Done.
Sold.
Done.
Sold. I'm going to pin the pilot
That's
tomorrow.
it. I'm calling HDTV. Let me get them on the horn.
All right, where was I?
I have no idea.
Oh yeah,
flop house, flop pound.
Yeah, he found out that Jesse's staying there. He goes inside against the recommendations of the wolf, and he finds Jesse, who is just bombed out of his mind here. He must be on heroin, because he's got the very same effect. You shake him, he doesn't wake up, that sort of thing. Walt tries to move him. He starts bawling because A, he thinks he killed Jane, and B, he loved Jane.
I thought this was a great contrast between rationalization versus acceptance of guilt and burden. Like, Walt's like, you didn't kill, you had no responsibility. No, you just have to. And he's like, wants to take it all.
Oh yeah.
Like, they're too extreme. Walt is the proverbial duck that water rolls right off his back. And Jesse is the proverbial guilt sponge. And
yes, that is a fair analogy for those two people.
Yeah. And it gets worse. Like that line Jesse has later in the treatment facility or whatever high-end junkie place he's at, when he's like, I deserve this. Everything you said out in the desert is true. And the Walt's like, oh, and I have to leave this kid because I'm getting a surgery. It's
sure,
with the full realization of him losing his family at the same time. That's a hell of a scene coming up that we're not talking about yet.
We're not talking about that yet. No. Does Walt get any credit for going into this place himself?
We talked about this last week.
Instead of just sending Mike in.
I think that Walt's treatment of Jesse in this stretch here is probably goes a long way to why I still felt loyalty toward them as deep into the run as I did.
Yeah, it's very compassionate.
Yes, he's a control freak and, you know, doing all these awful things, but if you were on the inside of his circle, he really did go the extra mile to try to save you or to try to help you. Now,
yes, he is also the guy who let her die and caused her to die.
There is a lot of complicated feelings, but I'm saying if it wasn't for this aspect, this father savior thing with Jesse, this protectiveness, this like it's tender, their relationship at this point. I don't know that Walt is able to make it out the next season without just a hissable villain.
Yeah, I think you're right. Their relationship is the thing that kind of preserves his humanity through most of this in my eyes.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. Absolutely right. And the fact that Jesse somehow it should undercut it that Jesse is so clueless about Walt's personal involvement in his misery, but for some reason it doesn't.
Jesse's a pretty clueless guy to begin with.
Right.
And he is starting to grow. I mean, even the line where he understands finally what Walter meant, that shows that Jesse is growing.
Yeah.
In his, you know, personal life, in, you know, his business life, as much as that is good or bad.
I think that's part of the thing is that Walt is aware of that. He's self-aware enough to know that, oh yes, I'm feeling bad that he is thanking me and he's taking all this on because this is he knows, his rationalizations aside, he knows what he did to Jane.
Oh yeah,
he knows what he's done to Jesse, and that's eating at him. And
it's a perfect parallel to how he feels when he's being interviewed later on for the TV.
Yeah.
For the news program. I mean, that's exactly what he's feeling there.
Yeah, he's still got enough decency to be mortified and offended when stuff like this happens.
Yeah.
Even when he's able to keep his hands kind of metaphorically clean in his own eyes, he still has the decency enough to feel bad about it.
Sure. And he finally gets some ramifications, some consequences brought down on him this episode. I like that. Jane's dad goes into her house to pick up a dress for her to wear during her funeral. And we find out there's not a lot of color in Jane's wardrobe. Not a lot of variation.
Shocking.
Didn't surprise anybody, I don't think.
Shocking. Because she's got put all her collars up on that wall.
Yes. Did you see what's in that mural?
Hell yeah, I did. The pink bear.
All right. Yeah, it looks to me like she's maybe like wrapped up in a blanket of black holes or something. And I don't know what all the imagery there is for, but there's definitely the pink teddy bear up in the top right.
Yeah, no, that's
there's an alarm clock,
giant emo mural.
Yeah,
of stuff that probably is deep. She would love nothing more than you to ask her what that our alarm clock means, and she would probably go on a great length about it.
Oh yeah, but
she's dead now, and we're spared that conversation.
Thank goodness. Did you have anything else to say about that?
Just that John Delancey, who I've only really seen as Q from Star Trek.
Yeah, me too.
Who is a very memorable but one-dimensional character.
Yeah.
He just there's a lot of ways you could play this, and I don't know how much Adam had in the direction of this and how much Vince did, but the way he played it as, I don't know, like, hey, you know, he's like weirdly respectful of the kind of girl his daughter was. Like, you know, she's not a yellow dress wearer, but he found like this kind of simple little hippie dark blue dress, and it's just quiet and matter of fact, but sad. And there's something really haunting about the way he performed this.
Definitely. I felt like he hadn't had time to fully process this yet, of course. And he was kind of just going about the motions of having a funeral to prepare for and all that stuff. I didn't feel like he was thinking about any of the things that he saw there.
No, and just like, you know, the fact that he
was a
still
zombie.
trying to process that he's burying his little girl.
Mm-hmm.
And in my head canon, he's talking to his wife and they're estranged and they probably don't talk much, but now they're having to force together in this difficult circumstance. And just super sad, man. Like I said, I got this is one of the scenes I got choked up on.
All right.
And also long sleeves.
Yep.
Because, you know, high detract
no
marks.
cleavage. No cleavage on the funeral dress.
Sure. You don't want to see corpse cleavage.
No.
Post-mortem lividity is probably not going to be too kind. But no, it's just a great scene. Goddamn you, Vince.
Then we go back to Walt, who is changing Holly's diaper while the computer in the background continues to ding. Walt asks Junior to turn it down because I really feel like he just can't stand the sound of this thing. For his own internal reasons,
little telltale
his
heart,
own pride, his own Skylar gets a call from a newspaper who wants to interview Junior about the website. And at this point, I'm just thinking this is the worst possible outcome for Walt.
Yeah, and I think this is where it really starts to turn on him because it's bad enough like when they do the interview and Walt Jr. is just gushing about what a decent man it is. But to think that this story is going to get featured and legitimate people are going to be giving this money. For a guy like Walt, from a pride standpoint and from just a mortification, this has got to be the worst.
It is. For so many reasons. I
just can't even imagine what it's like to be staring down this like, oh God, this was a scheme and I wasn't comfortable with it. And now it's turned into this other thing and all these people are getting wrapped up and we're getting praise and just, oh, so gross. So gross. It's kind of like, when you half-ass a project and someone says, oh, thank you for all your hard work. It's just, just shut up, go away.
Yeah.
That's kind of what I feel like Walt is, only at a much grander scale.
This is a really good scene coming up here where we get Hank kind of plotting more meth sightings while he's on the phone there. And several people from the business community come walking in, which include the Chicken Man. The Chicken Man,
Sure.
His name we find out is Gustavo Fring. He comes in. That was super shocking the first time I saw it. See that guy showing up in the DEA office. I was like, what is happening?
Death Star balls on this guy.
Yeah. Hank tells him about the work that they're doing for charity, lets them know that their outreach programs are helping. And then Gus sees a donation jar for Walt.
The other, like, oh my God.
Yep. And he asks, is he an agent? And then Hank explains, no, he's my brother-in-law. He's got cancer. And then Gus donates some money.
Can you even imagine what would happen if Hank, if Hank said, oh yeah, he's an agent.
Yeah. he was on a ride along with me just the other week.
Yeah, right.
What?
Yeah, here's a picture of him in a DEA vest. No, I'm just joking. Here, have a Schrader brow. That would have been funny. I don't know if Gus's poker face would stand up to that.
The guy who owns the Adobe Hotels is named Andy Kaufman. I don't know if that is an Andy Kaufman reference or if that is just a dude's name. But the other guy is.
It's funny because I was in
Turner.
I on my note taking watch. I was in the middle because that kind of stuff just rolls over me. With names and faces. And the second time through, I was about to rewind and get everybody's name, and I'm like, no one cares. So I just went on and like, really, they snuck an Andy Kaufman reference on me.
Apparently, yeah. The other guy was a no name, but then Gus.
No, he's probably some other famous guy.
So this is interesting, right?
It shows George O'Keefe.
Why do you think Gus is actually there?
Because it's part of his chameleon armor.
Okay. Because he obviously couldn't have known about Walt, I don't think.
No.
I don't think he has that much information.
No, I think Gus he's up in the DEA's guts all the time.
Okay.
That's my impression, that he He sponsors these fun runs and all that stuff. He's hiding in plain sight, just like
All right.
when he was at Los Pollos Hermanos.
Legitimate businessman. I sell chicken.
I do. Yeah, I've not nothing to hard. This is a terrible scourge in our neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
And who knows? Like, if you take it another layer, he could really internalize this lie when you find out that he doesn't peddle in New Mexico at all.
Oh, okay. Maybe he cares deeply about the community.
Exactly. And this community doesn't extend beyond the state borders.
Fuck all the other communities.
Exactly. It takes a village, and that other village needs to worry because my house is in order.
Could be.
I don't know. We'll have to see where it all goes.
All right. Walt leaves Jesse at a detox center in the middle of the desert, apparently. Jesse understands what Walt meant when he said, "I deserve this." And there's a scene between them in this episode. This location is so great. Like, just visually, it's outstanding.
Yeah, it looks like
the inside of a tulip or something.
Yeah,
like they're in this giant desert tulip.
I wonder how much it cost. And I also wonder Walt paid some out of his half, or this was all Jesse's money that he's absconded with.
Hey, good question.
And also,
well, did
Mike take the money?
Yeah. Okay, we're just gonna call him Mike.
Shit. Or are you going to edit all these out?
No, I'm not.
Okay, so when Mike took the money,
Mike did take the money. Yeah.
Okay, so that was my question. I forgot whether that, because I know we saw the money in the apartment, but I wasn't sure if that was what he was throwing all the paraphernalia into.
It was. Yeah.
Oh man, that money's going to be covered in stale bong water.
It's not. The bong was empty.
Was it?
Yeah, it was yellow.
So Jesse in the throes of heroin addiction cleaned out his bong.
I thought the same. Nobody cleans out their bong.
Not someone in the riding a horse. No, not at all.
So I was super surprised. I actually rewound it because I thought, like, he just poured a bunch of bong water on this money.
I assumed too, but it's like, okay, well, it's TV. You know, people stage eat. They stage put bongs in double bags. Who knows?
Sure, why not? Walt arrives home. I don't know how much you want to talk about just that scene. We kind of talked about it earlier, but I'm going to move on if that's all right.
Move on, please.
Okay. Walt comes home. He finds a news crew in his house, and they interview the family, and a clearly unhappy Walt about the website and the donation.
That's just getting out of his control. I mean, it was a newspaper article. Now Channel 13 Action News is there.
Especially, it's worse because of how much Walt Jr. is talking up his father. He's my hero. He's my hero. He has no idea what his dad's been doing behind the scenes.
Like, it gets worse every word out of his mouth. And Marie's in the back, like, smile, you know, and she is in
her Sunday best purple dress.
In her element. She's like eating this up, and he's like, he's a great father and teacher. He's a decent man. He always does the right thing. Would you say he's your hero? Totally. My dad's my hero. This is just killing Walt.
Yeah. And it's got to be especially
This is emotional chemotherapy.
Oh, yeah, pretty much. So do you think it's going through his head that he is treating Jesse more like a son than his son? That he hasn't been there for his son at all that we've seen in this series. I mean, pouring a week breakfast of cereal for him is not going to cut it when he's going to flop houses.
What do you want? What do you want
for Jesse?
I don't know. How much of this is subconscious versus conscious and all that stuff.
All right. I felt like that might have been something that he was also concerned about, because it seems like there's just such a big mix of emotions here. And just a grab bag of
we only see the time that Walt spends away from his family, but the vast majority of the time he's there, and and even though he was very unhappy in the beginning of Breaking Bad, I never felt like they were one of those families.
No, I don't think he's neglectful or anything necessarily. No. And frankly, his son doesn't need the help that Jesse needs.
Sure.
So
I can see him being, kind of an uncompromising dick at school and more patient at home. Mm-hmm. My dad was the opposite. Like, I'd go into his work and they'd be like, "Oh, Richard we think he's a saint. He is so patient. Mm-hmm. He never loses temper." I'm like, this motherfucker. You're talking about this mother? This
got you all fooled.
Yes. He just kicked my ass last week for like leaving a whisker mowing the lawn. You're drilling people's teeth and he don't care. Like, what the fuck?
All right. Yeah, I guess we should move on. We've talked kind of in depth already about that scene.
Yeah, which scene are we talking about?
Just the interview.
Yeah.
So let's go.
It's emotional torture.
Yes, definitely. Let's go to surgery prep. While it's being prepped for surgery, he's being given horse tranquilizers.
Alpaca tranquilizers.
Alpaca tranquilizers. And he accidentally lets it slip about the second cell phone right before he goes under.
Mm-hmm.
And this rings alarm bells for Skylar.
Oh, yeah. Skylar. I was trying to come up with the perfect word to describe her reaction. And it's not stunned. It's not stricken. I think you're right. Alarm bells.
But it's more than alarm bells. It's like, oh my God, it's been under my nose the whole time. I was right.
It's someone having a epiphany,
but
like a negative epiphany. Yeah, it's pretty good, really good work by her. And it's this stuff is pretty the family group hug, and they're just alone. There's no Marie there being cloying in the background. There's no Hank, trying to take the edge off. It's just them. They're hugging, and this you really see what Walt is going to lose in the next 15 minutes.
Yeah, definitely. There is a surgery montage. Wait, before we leave that scene, I know it's supposed to be a little weird, but when Walt's like moving his mouth around, like saying this stuff's pretty good, does it look like freakishly unnatural movement to you?
I know.
It looks like I don't know how he moves his mouth like that. It's bizarre. It's like his jaw is detached from his face. I don't know. That's the impression I got.
Yeah, I don't know. It's like me every time I go to the dentist, I guess.
All right.
But no, it didn't seem unnatural to me.
Okay.
I love the surgery montage. I love the choice of music, the Chocolate Genius, Life. It was like you get this. It's kind of brutal. Yeah. Like, you hear like someone sizing you up like a butcher sizes up a lamb. That's what these surgeons are doing.
You're a pile of meat.
You are a pile of meat, and they are tugging and they are ripping and they are putting their whole body force onto it. Like, my son was born as a C-section, and it was horrifying. It was horrifying what they do to a living human body to bring forth another life into the world. Yeah. This is like the opposite. They're bringing forth death out of a body. But I'm just always shocked at how much force people use. No wonder you're so goddamn sore. Yeah. Not the incision.
I was worried about like Bryan Cranston, the actor, after that.
Yeah. Like
they're heaving him around.
The way they're showing his feet wobbling around and his head's unprotected. It's just, it's crazy. It's crazy.
Yep. Why do they tape their eyes closed? Is that for the benefit of the doctors who don't want to see a freakish corpse just rolling their eyes over?
So when the anesthesiologist doesn't do the job, at least the doctor doesn't have to be freaked out about it. The patient's sitting there.
They also tape their mouth shut, so perfect.
Exactly. They intubate. It's for the surgeon's comfort. If you wake up mid-surgery, the last thing you want to do is the surgeon start screaming.
Yeah, that's no good for you or the surgeon.
If you're stuck inside a husk of meat and need to scream and you can't, fine. But the surgeon's going to be able to do his work.
Several weeks later, Walt's beard has grown. He's noticeably bearded up. Goatee, actually.
And he's flamboyant.
Happy?
He's had a fashion transplant.
Oh, yes, his bright pink sweater. That connects to the pink teddy bear, right?
Oh, of course. But it was jarring.
It was.
I'm not sure I approve of the choice of color matching in this instance.
I felt like his facial hair was lighter too. Like it was more of a blondish brown,
a little bit
like a darkish brown.
It was a little bit, yeah. No, totally.
Yeah. I don't know what's changed in Walt. Maybe the cancer was just causing his hair to be darker on his face.
Or this like some kind of pickup shot. I don't know. I don't know. It did look, or maybe it's the lighting, but it did look different. It was a different Walt. It's a Walt we've never seen before, and I don't think we see hints.
Yeah, no, I don't think so. They're giving him good news. Skylar's asking about whether.
Can I ask you a question though? Because they're clearly drawing a parallel to him and the teddy bear, but I don't know what that means thematically.
It might just be directly making that connection. I don't know.
But to what I don't think Walt is the teddy bear.
No. The teddy bear is a reminder of the carnage that he's inflicting upon society.
So again, I don't understand dressing him up as the teddy bear thematically.
He is the teddy bear.
He is the one
I
that
don't know, man.
bears.
I don't know.
Okay.
I'm sure if you go on Cerebral, they would have something about that. Yeah.
Oh, he did did a two-parter, like 8-9 pages of stuff on there.
All right. The sweater's got to be.
But I had
there.
my own pathos. I was like, go with, I see what you're doing over there, Arya, but I'm taking this. I'm taking the stick over. I'm laying in this manual.
All right.
I'm smashing these two aircraft together myself.
It's 7 weeks out of Holly's birth here, so we've got a good timeline. That is apparently just long enough for Skylar to do all the research that she needs to do to make up her mind, which we'll find out later.
I believe that. She's a bloodhound.
Yeah, definitely. The way she lays it out there is really compelling,
Mm-hmm.
and it feels like a natural course of investigation for her. Jane's dad goes in for his first day of work, and he gets some condolences from a coworker in a surprisingly pedestrian break room. Like, this is not the kind of break room you'd see on like 24 in an air traffic control.
I
think there would be more metal and industrial shit, and it would be darker. It'd be a lot darker. The coffee would be being poured out of a giant aluminum vat.
I think this is more true to life.
You're right. You're absolutely right. It looked weird on TV for some reason.
Okay.
We find out that he's an air traffic controller, so that becomes important in a couple scenes.
I think they hinted that before. Like, he had mentioned about training people, and they might even made mention that he was an air traffic controller in the previous episode, but it was like a one sentence deal.
I don't think so. He did make mention about, they're hiring anybody these days.
Yeah, there's no standards and there's no experience.
Yeah, we talked about that in the spoiler section.
Being
that
ironic.
becomes a big issue here. Yeah.
The experienced trainer is the one that's the problem because he's emotionally compromised.
Yep. Walt's fussing over his goatee while Skylar packs her things, and then she tells Walt to do the same. Be gone by Monday morning because she has found everything out. Almost everything. She knows that Walt is lying continuously.
And I agree. To a point, it doesn't matter what it's about.
Yeah.
And if there is some big story that could explain it all in some kind of Downton Abbey type fashion, then be out with it by all means. But that much lying and deception is too much for a relationship to withstand.
Here's my question to you.
Okay.
If his pleading succeeds and Skylar does not leave, does he actually tell her the truth there? Come completely clean. I've been cooking meth. I sold the meth. I've killed people. All of that.
I kind of think he would have.
I think so too.
That's
the moment where he had an out again, but
because that happened in season 1 too, and we debated whether I think that now I don't know what this says about Walt and their relationship, and this is just me speaking off the cuff, but I feel like his plan was working. He was insulating his family from the damage. He didn't see any danger. It was all upside. And, what Walt does from this point forward, I don't know.
He could be totally out. He's got his money.
He could be.
He's got his health now.
I don't think that's where he was heading, but...
Sure, but after, like, Skylar discovers it and confronts him, and then if he were to confess, I think he could just make a clean break right there.
Yeah. I don't know exactly how it... But, I mean... Isn't this a little bit about what the Ted dirty book situation is? Just a little bit. And Skylar's been on an arc too. It's nothing as monstrous as Walt, but she went from lying to banks and credit card companies to saying, to having a kind of an inappropriate relationship with her boss, to covering fiscal malfeasance, saying that she knows she shouldn't do it and there's jail time. This is illegal.
Yeah.
I know it's another big step from white collar crime to drug lord, but I don't know. I don't know. That's one of the great questions: is at what point could Walt have brought Skylar in, and they could be this crime couple, or was that just too a ridiculous concept to ever work?
Oh, see, I wasn't even suggesting that. I was suggesting that Walt go back to not being a crime lord.
That too.
And Skylar would just know about it, that he did these things in the past, but he wouldn't do them again.
Right.
As far as Skylar joining him,
now the thing I think Walt would fuck up is he would try to tell her the least damaging version of the truth that she would accept at that time. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
Like there'd be no bodies in the story. There'd be no Hank almost getting put into
why tell her?
I mean, yeah. And then she like would find out and that would be it. That's, I think, where he would fall into the trap.
Yeah.
He would, that's absolutely what Walt will do.
Yeah. And it's interesting to see, you know, Skylar's arc of kind of becoming a little bit more like Walt, getting a little more involved in things she shouldn't be, as kind of Walt rubbing off on his family, Walt having an effect on this family. Because all of the things she's doing is because Walt is lying to her, Walt is pushing her toward it. A lot of this is Walt's fault. And for Skylar to start reaping some of those consequences is interesting.
Sure.
Then we go back to, well, I don't know, maybe I should... We should comment a little bit about this scene, because the performances in this scene,
I was going to say, before you moved on,
from Anna Gunn and Bryan Cranston.
Anna Gunn, I thought,
wow.
I don't know, because did you think it was a little too much? Like she was a little too self-indulgent? And I don't think so.
I don't.
But I could see a certain person watching this and be like, okay, I'm on your side, but you're now driving me away by being so smug and smarmy about ending a relationship. Like, it's less sad and more like, I've got you by the balls and fuck.
Just put yourself in that situation. You've been being lied to.
Give yourself 3 or 4 weeks to coldly think about this and emotionally move on.
And remember all the lies and roll them around in your head.
And you've had all the cries and you want to come in here at this relation. You want to come in here decisive.
Yeah.
Like nothing he can say is going to change your mind.
Yeah.
It works for me.
I mean, she just shut him up. Like that is not Walt's style to just go out quietly, but he had no other choice here.
And the best is when she lowered the hammer about his mom and she said, thanks for that too. That, you know,
because I love talking to your mom.
Yeah. And having this conversation where she found out that was a treat. That was really great. Really great.
Yeah. Can't say enough good stuff about Anna Gunn and Bryan Cranston in this scene. Then we go back to air traffic control, where Q is somehow distracted by his grief.
Is he, or is it possible that
he meant to crash those planes?
Is deliberately doing this?
No, God, no. Why would he do that? Come up with some...
Lash out. He's been repressing this grief.
He's angry at the world?
Yeah.
Is he gonna do this shit all the time? Get into his daughter's closet and get her wardrobe of all black?
I'm just saying, when I was
murals above his bed.
It's, you know, one of my many problems with this is that it's so impossible for this to happen. Okay. There's multiple safeguards built into the individual planes, the pilot training, the air traffic control system, the air traffic controller themselves, that I'd actually be more comfortable if he did do this something maliciously to just and some kind of mad frustration with the world. But
you're saying it couldn't happen anyway, so
no, I'm not saying like I don't know that an air traffic controller couldn't maliciously direct traffic. I think that if I understand it, their aircraft warning inside the aircrafts themselves would alert the pilots, and their standard operating procedure is to make 2 opposed, like, you know, one guy turns left, one guy turns right, one guy dives, one guy goes. So it's like, no matter, it's like, you know, it's instinct that you're going to do the thing that saves you in this circumstance.
Okay, I can see that.
But it's more plausible if I have one of the more important safeguards completely bypassing it, and he's a senior air traffic controller. I don't know if it's possible, but if he was doing something deliberate and that's why he was so sweaty, like if he was just on some kind of...
I'm going to say that is certainly not what's happening here.
Well, he doesn't seem emotionally at that. He doesn't seem angry, but then again, he does seem just very detached.
That's my whole point.
And he's giving deliberate orders to these people that he is like, he's giving commands.
But listen to what he's saying. At one point, instead of saying Juliet, he says Jane. Like,
yeah,
he is very much in his head about Jane. There is no way he's doing this maliciously.
I don't think so either. I'm just saying, I wish he was. The only thing I wish a ATC controller would. I think because then I don't know, something, because it's just a combination of just how hard to believe that this would actually happen at a major airport. How it just and over Walt's house,
yeah,
you know, smack dab above it, landing his plane, and the fact that really the big thing is this is a bait and switch. This is a deliberate wanting us to believe one thing and setting up all the facts for us to draw these conclusions. And it feels like we're being punished. Like, how dare you use your brain to kind of come to a conclusion because we're going to pull something completely out of our ass that is not, you know, Vince Gilligan made a joke in his interview with Alan Sepinwall because Alan said this felt kind of like Deus Ex Machina.
Yeah.
You know, God from the Machine. He said it's like I think he said it's like diabolic ex machina, like it's like the devil from the machine. Like we pulled Satan out of this contraption. But I don't know, man. I hate The Usual Suspects for the same reason. Like, you know, you compare to Usual Suspects where the director is lying to you the entire time. And then in the final minute, it's like, look, I lied to you this whole time. Ha ha ha. Versus Sixth Sense, where I'm telling a story.
Start to feel like Skylar.
And compare that to Sixth Sense, where it's like I'm telling a story. It has a twist, but I'm playing with all my cards open on the table.
Yeah.
And the amazing thing is you don't see it and then it's obvious afterwards.
Yeah.
This is not like when I was watching it, I'm like, I'm looking for tells. There's no tell. This looks like it's a crime scene investigation after an explosion happens. I don't want to harp on this, but I think it's bullshit. It's bullshit, and you can excise this 20 minutes out of the season, and it's so much better from an artistic and emotional level. It's not distracting. I don't know why he did it.
So I think I know there are two strokes at the end of this. I'm not going to argue that it is not likely impossible, and I'm not going to argue that it is a bait and switch, because I think it is both of those things. What I am going to say I like about this is the way it ties it ties this carnage that he is reaping on society into his family personally, because where that bear lands, that bear landing in his pool as a representation of the damage right after his wife and family have just left him, I think that is a very good thing to do thematically. I think that ties it in both the larger picture and the smaller picture, the macro and the micro here.
Is it worth it?
That's a fair question.
That's the thing. Like, I can see that's a slight upside with the downside that I've already laid, and I just wonder if, you know, it's worth taking that creative risk. And it also,
you might be right.
Like,
maybe it's not.
Seemed like it's expensive as hell. Like, you know, all that went into staging this at the end with the computer effects and the aerial photography and all that stuff.
Yeah, no, the photography is really good.
No,
I don't even know how they got that shot, like, of the bear falling. Like, I imagine they probably didn't drop something over the city. That they wouldn't allow them to do that.
No, I said, I think I felt like I said aerial photography. I wouldn't be surprised if that whole thing was digital somehow.
CG, yeah. Just a Google Maps zoom in.
Oh, that's really good. I gotta say, it's really good CG for basic cable.
Yeah.
Like, that's very impressive technical effects.
And in a season where Breaking Bad wasn't that popular, it's probably not getting the budget that it gets in the last couple of seasons.
Sure. Yeah. I don't know, man. I still, it's amazing how much that impacted my opinion of the overall season. Because now it's like, I don't know how to contextualize season 2 because it's got, you know, it's still Breaking Bad telling kind of these tight, very personally connected stories. And, you know, it becomes more and more larger in life, but it's got this larger than life thing that happens at the end. It's such a coincidence, and it's kind of an artistic misfire for me. I don't know how. I don't know how I would rank it against the other seasons at this point.
Well, I have a choice quote.
I certainly think, I tell you what,
yeah.
I think that season 2, I used to put season 2 at the bottom. I think now season 1 is at the bottom, not because it's terrible, but because it was 7 episodes long.
Yeah.
7 episodes long. And season 2 is just better in every way.
I agree.
It's not, I
it's
keep
hard.
on saying, when I say that, I feel like I'm taking away from season 1. Season 2 had more emotional connections, more interesting stories, more genuine suspense, more of everything good that we love about Breaking Bad.
I think that's natural. I mean, it's hard to get that in a season 1 just because we don't have as much investment in the characters or the plot or anything like that. You're still building that world. And in season 2, you can really play on the things that you've already established in really interesting ways.
But ultimately, your more obsessed fans that are trying to piece together the meanings from this, I think, are going to feel. I think are going to ultimately feel betrayed by what happened, and that's a shame.
I can buy that.
That's a shame. You know, that because he wanted to. Seems like the big justification is he wanted something that showed real showmanship. He used the word showmanship in these interviews a lot, and that maybe he learned something, because I don't think there was a lot of showy just for show things that weren't directly connected to. I don't know. I just don't know what to say.
I feel like the rest of the show,
I still hate this part of it.
I feel like in the rest of the show, they built those showy displays on top of really solid skeletons.
Yes.
And here it was more the artsy show,
and so unnecessary. We already had with Donald and Walt and Skyler breaking up, and Jesse's reaction. We already were shook up and shattered enough. The Whites breaking up is a hell of a season finale. Is a hell of a cliffhanger.
I'm with you.
What is this going to do? But yeah, I guess I don't know what to say. I think I've said my piece.
All right. Vince Gilligan knows what to say. He has an opinion on the pink bear.
Bring it.
He says he was asked, what's with the pink bear? What is it? And specifically, what is with that eyeball that gets sucked into the filter? He says, I guess if you're holding my feet to the fire, what should I do? Dan Carlin voice? I guess if you're holding my feet to the fire, but it would be a country. Yeah, I can't do it. I guess if you're holding my feet to the fire, what it means to me is the eye of God on Walt. If not necessarily judging him, nonetheless watching him, keeping tabs on him. So he kind of has this idea that this is not necessarily a punishment for Walt. It's just God saying, like, it's not an act of God saying you've done a bad thing. It's just God saying, I'm here. I see what you're doing.
That God.
I know.
What a wild and crazy guy.
He is he has a surprisingly dry sense of humor. He does. Yeah.
Some people would say 167 people dying would be a tragedy, but
sure. The 10 Commandments. I mean, that's pretty funny, God. You're pretty funny. Throwing a few in there that nobody really cares about.
I don't know, man. I don't know what to say that I haven't already said.
Yeah. I just wanted to get, a little perspective from the Villigan himself.
I read a lot of people that love that part. I mean, I could see you seem like you're a neutral. Like it didn't bother me. It's
far-fetched.
It's just another piece of the kind of like the texture of the show. Okay.
But I see the problems with it, but I also see the things that he was trying to do with it, beyond the implausible and or the deceptive. But there's like that are interesting.
The AV Club review just was gushing about this and the fiery cataclysm and the judgment from God and like all this stuff and how much they loved it. And I just was, talking about their jaws. My jaw was gaping at the review. I just like, I don't get it. I don't get it.
Okay. That's it, man. It's the end of the episode. Why don't we get to some feedback?
Okay. We have Barry C said, thanks for doing series 2. I'd forgotten just how strong it was, so this rewatch is really enjoyable. I know how strongly Aaron feels about the whole fishnado feel about Walt indirectly causing 2 planes to collide. However, do you think maybe the Villigan put that in there just on the off chance the show got canceled, as you have informed us almost happened for 3 series? Apparently, I didn't get this off Reddit. I got this off of my feedback from Barry C.
I guess so.
It strikes me as a good way of showing that there really was evil consequences to Walt's actions if the show did get canceled, meaning it did have some sort of way of bookending the show, while at the same time making it easy to completely ignore if the show got picked up again, so we can see a more gradual development of Mr. Chips' Scarface. Yeah, again, I think that's the best theory, that this was him. If it's got to end, I'm going to go big. I'm going to make this big metaphysical statement. I'm going to take away his family. I'm going to take away most of his money, because most of that went to his surgery or to Jesse. And then I'm going to give him, if that's not enough, I'm going to rain fire down on him. That would have worked. But as a guy just watching the show and like just eating up Breaking Bad and thinking in the final episode, being reminded once again, like, oh, this body bags, and how is this going to, just it felt like the rug getting pulled out from underneath me as a fan.
Yeah.
So
it would have been a shame, man, if the show ended there, because I feel like this got this would have gotten Firefly in a way. You know, like, wrap it up, boys. This is it. You get an episode to do it. You get a movie to do it. That's it.
It would be intriguing to think about, like, if Breaking Bad had concluded in a series of like a trilogy of movies that roughly corresponded to the plots of the final 3 seasons. Man.
Yeah, I don't know.
In an alternate universe with a big budget, like, how intense that would have been.
Yeah, cramming in those 3 seasons in 6 hours would have been tough.
Yeah. Michael McBee said, first note, name game from last week's episode. Jane was born in Phoenix. We talked about that. Now I think we talked about it in the spoiler section. Now that's out of the way, just want to point out some observations I had about Walt at the Flop House. If you pay attention to Walt's expression to everything when he enters, he shows this expression of disdain for all the inhabitants, showing how he has elevated view of himself, viewing all of them as below him, having a total disconnect on the realization that his product is part of the problem for these people, either making them land here or close to it. And then there's his reaction to finding Jesse. You can clearly see he's excited to see that he is alive, but as Jesse has his meltdown, you see Walt instantly confused as to what to do, being confronted by such strong emotion before trying to console him as best as he could, and peaking when it comes to telling Jesse not to blame himself. Where did Walt get such great talent for passing blame on other things? So that's kind of the point that I had as well.
Yeah, there's a lot in that Flop House that we didn't talk about. I mean, I remember when
you're talking about like the Mos Eisley Cantina crew of characters. You had a dude with a donut embedded in his head, and
yeah, you got the guy who he first meets at the door, and people are like, "Oh, that's a mirror image of Walter White if he were to use his own stuff." And I don't really buy that.
Nah.
But who knows? Who knows? That might be there. But yeah, I think it's far more effective, as he says, about, you know, this being a representation of the damage Walt's doing, and he doesn't even notice that.
Josh P said, here are my thoughts on Jane's death. If Walt didn't help her, if it were my son or daughter throwing their life away, I'd let their boyfriend or girlfriend die if it meant sparing them from that kind of life. Granted, my kids are 2 years and 4 months old, but still I wouldn't think twice about it. So let's say you want to argue that Walt doesn't truly care for Jesse like a son. Okay, whatever life is in store for Jesse because of Walt, be it a meth cook, dealer, murderer, an addict, I would argue that it's a far better life than one he would live with Jane. A life of stealing, fucking, and possibly killing for or because of that next hit. So Walt, debatable. Walt will roll her over, then
Bonnie and Clyde had it good until they went out, right?
Then that makes him as responsible for his death as the heroine coursing through her veins or the vomit that chokes her. She chose to get fucked up beyond belief because she's a junkie. She would have been dead in 6 months, a year tops. I'm giving Walt a pass here. Sure, he's evil, manipulative, a sociopath, but in my opinion, Jane's blood is not on his hands.
Well, I disagree with that last statement, but I kind of agree with a lot of that.
I think that it depends. I think that there is multiple levels of like blood being on Walt's hands.
Okay. What do you mean?
Well, there's the literal, like it's unarguable that if he hadn't turned Jane over, she'd still be alive.
Yes.
And yes, maybe she's dead in 6 months, or maybe her dad picks him up and guilts him into this thing, or maybe they have a change of heart at the airport, or because I don't know. That's the interesting thing about death. It's final. It's finality. So
yeah, no,
she's dead. She's never going to be able to get herself clean. People get themselves clean all the time. So I don't know. It's hard for me to say Walt is blameless.
Yeah. Oh, no, I would absolutely disagree with anyone who says that.
However, I do agree at the point that if that was my son and I was in that exact same situation, I'd be sorely tempted to do the same thing.
Okay.
If I saw someone destroying his life. So anyway, sure. You have a take on that? No,
I don't have kids, so I don't feel like I'm qualified to talk about that.
Liz G said, I have no problem with plane crash or the hints laid out leading up to that reveal. The plane crash, in my opinion, is one more example of the wreckage and devastation that Walt is causing as he manufactures meth. I want to raise a point again. If Walter was not, or Skylar was not pregnant, she would leave Walt. Skylar had the opportunity to review all that happened after Walt slipped and mentioned the second cell phone while under sedation. Skylar conducted a thorough investigation after she had the baby. She even admitted that she had to believe the fugue state story because she is about to give birth. Who would make something like that up? Her anger was so controlled. That's a good point. That she, that Liz was repping the fact that if she wasn't pregnant, she might have left Walt earlier. And she's saying that this is all evidence of once she gotten, she didn't have the baby brain going on anymore and all that. And she's had time to think about it, that she made a quick, decisive decision. There's a great scene as she had packed her bag and told Walt to get out, how scared she must have been to realize $100,000 had come into their home and paid the doctor bills. I have no idea where the money came from. Like she told him as she drove off, she's afraid to hear what Walt had to tell her. So that is pretty much the end of the feedback until we get to the spoiler section.
Wow.
They didn't have a lot to see.
That was super short.
Mm-hmm.
Surprising. Okay. Well then let's do an outro and get out of here.
Okay.
Go to the spoiler section.
I don't know when we're going to come back. The best way to keep in touch with us is to follow us on facebook.com/baldmove or on Twitter @baldmove, because that's when you'll see our release schedule posted. Check out baldmove.com. Keep participating in the forums. We won't just spring it on you. We'll probably announce it a couple weeks in advance, do a season preview cast, get some feedback going, and then go on to season 3.
Did we decide that if we got a bunch of feedback for this season, we were going to do a wrap-up cast?
I would be shocked if we got enough feedback. Although I don't know, I'd spit a lot of fire about this.
This was too small of a feedback section for us to have done a full episode on it.
No, that's what I'm saying.
It's like 5 minutes.
I would be shocked at the rate of feedback we got if we had enough to scrape together a wrap-up.
Okay.
So don't expect one, because that's the thing. Every time we say, well, maybe we'll, maybe one, then we get a bunch of emails from people saying, what happened to the wrap-up? Probably won't be a wrap up. If we get a little bit of feedback, we could consider that when we come back next season. But I could be shocked. I could, like, all this stuff I'm saying about the plane crash could like bring people out of the woodworks, and I'll take y'all on. Come on, I'll take y'all. But unless that happens, then if you want to make it happen, you can email us at breakinggood@baldmove.com.
Okay,
and maybe we'll be back in a week or two.
Sure, or hit us on the forums, all that. Twitter, Facebook. That's it. We'll see you guys in the spoiler section if you want to stay until then. If not, see you next year. Until then, I'm Jim.
I'm Aaron. See ya. Can I see what the hell's going on here?
And we're back with the spoiler section. What do we have this week?
Something I've been saving for weeks and weeks and weeks. Michael P sent in. It was an image of Holly in season 5 dressed up in a pink bear outfit.
Oh yeah. All right.
The last of the, I believe, pink bear Easter eggs. I mean, we see the eyeball rolling around.
There's a bunch of them, yeah.
For seasons and seasons. And I want to kind of talk about the God's eye watching Walt, because that certainly was a recurring motif.
Yeah.
And, we talked in previous spoiler sections about Don Eladio's eyeball necklace and like all this eyeball imagery. What did you have to talk about spoiler wise? Because you said you had a couple things.
I had one thing, which is not very significant, but in the episode Rabid Dog, I think it's season 4, or potentially 5A. I don't remember exactly. The pink teddy bear can be seen shot through Walt's car up in a tree, just like hanging out up in a tree. I don't know.
Interesting.
It's weird. But that was one of the Easter eggs. I mean, it shows up in a lot of places. It showed up last episode in Phoenix, actually.
Right.
It was just on the ground.
I thought it was cool how you would not be surprised. I would not be surprised if it turns out that damn pink bear is in every episode of the season.
Maybe so.
I'm not saying that is, but I wouldn't be surprised if 20 years from now someone has found a Tyler Durden style collection of pink bear imagery throughout this, because it's in a lot.
Yeah.
I thought it was interesting. Skylar at the end, her angry, just please, Walt, do me the courtesy of not denying it. It took a long time, but in Felina, he finally did come clean and said, I didn't do it just for the family. I did it for me because it felt good and I was good at it. Yeah.
And in this episode, for a brief second, he spares her. He doesn't say, oh, Skylar, I did it. Like I did these things, or lie to her anymore. He just shuts up.
Right. But that's been her whole thing. Like, from the very beginning of the series, like, don't shut me out. Don't keep these things from me. And he's done it all series. And he finally comes ultimately clean with her in the very last season, the very last episode, which was a big moment that they earned. I think it's interesting that Walt, to begin next season, kind of expects this. He's got this interesting relationship with the plane crash, and then we forget the plane crash ever happened, except for maybe a lapel pin that Saul wears throughout the different seasons.
Okay, yeah.
But I felt like he had this thing where the plane crash would magically make everything okay, or would change Skylar's mind, if I recall correctly. Do you remember that?
No, I don't, but it doesn't mean it didn't happen.
Like he's like of course you're going to change your mind because this big traumatic thing has happened, and it's happened right over our house and all this stuff. I also think it's interesting that imagine you're Skylar and you've had this money and that's come in, that Walter Jr.'s raised, and he's had a successful surgery, and who knows how much money he's got at this point. She tells Junior that they're moving out. They're staying Hank and Marie, and then Dad's going to move out. What does that page get shut down? Like, some of the most tragic things that happens in season 3 or 4 is the relationship between Skylar and Junior, because
the way his dad manipulates that into, or he doesn't even really do much, but Junior assumes a lot.
That's the thing, and it's all natural assumptions, and his silence is damning.
And at one point, he like calls her a bitch.
Yeah, he does.
Like it's really strained.
And then later on, Walt starts openly catering to it. I mean, getting in the fancy car, and he's, Daddy Warbucks, and she's Mama Bitch Face, and it's really gut wrenching how much shit Skylar takes because of this thing that Walt's got going on.
You're right. I think by the end of the series, it is flip flopped again. Where Walt is very much back on his mother's side.
Yeah, Walt Jr.
Flynn, yeah.
He's in full-on Flynn mode, too.
So I'm happy to see that it doesn't stay that way forever, right? Like, the relationship between mother and son there is not totally just destroyed.
No.
It's salvageable, at least.
Sure. But, yeah, playing that is... that's a terrible game they're playing with the family there.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think if there's anything else. You know, Gus hiding in plain sight. We know how deep that goes. Like, you know, the special agent in charge, Merker, loses his job over it because we see pictures of him going on fishing expeditions with Gus. I mean, Gus has been all up in law enforcement's business, again, hiding in plain sight.
And this is the introduction of Mike. The introduction
Mike.
of the famous Mike. I mean, he's such a big part of the show going forward.
And the dude doesn't look like he's aged a day for better or worse.
In Better Call Saul?
He's the same dude in this episode as he is in Better Call Saul this week that we saw.
All right. I think he looks a little bit older, but not much. Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah, he's got a little more of the jowl thing going on.
I think Jonathan Banks might be a little slimmer.
Maybe he lost some weight.
Can make you maybe look wrinkly, but I didn't even notice that. I mean, I don't know. I thought, just the mannerisms he had and the way he dealt with Jesse here.
He very much acts like Mike through and through the whole time.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's nice to see all these little pieces being put in place for what we know is the outcome of this.
Yeah, but that's the other thing that frustrates me, that the plane crash, just nothing really comes of it. It was a big showy moment in the middle of Breaking Bad history that is quickly forgotten. And
aren't you kind of glad that that's the case too? If they had pinned a whole bunch of the plot on this plane crash, wouldn't that have annoyed you more?
I don't know. My gut reaction would be yes, of course.
Okay.
But I have been surprised by other shows where they, you know, I'm frustrated with a certain plot line and where it's going, but where it ultimately goes, the destination was as much part of getting, or the journey was as much part of getting there as the destination.
Okay.
So if they put this out there and boom, deal with it, and then they started making that somehow, I don't know how they would do it, but if they somehow made that more meaningful and connected to the overall plot, so it was something that was vital going forward, maybe I would have learned to love it.
I'm surprised that you wouldn't have like
I've never
seen
this episode. Like, until today, I've only seen this episode once. That's how bad I had a visceral reaction.
So you did kind of do the Skylar, where you saw it, you had a summer to mull it over, or a winter, I guess in this case. You just kept thinking, oh man, I hated the fucking plane crash. And then when they come back for season 3, if they had continued to lie to you all about this plane crash, you might have eventually.
Well, that's the other thing I want to talk about. So that's my final bullet point here.
Okay.
We open in season 3 with the cousins and their Armani suits and their awesome cowboy boots crawling through the desert to this weirdo shrine.
Believe it or not, I have more of a problem with those characters than I do with this plane crash.
I was really close to checking out until 1 minute happened.
Okay.
Because I'm like, these guys, I just do not buy on. And it's
they're
weird.
Not characters, they're caricatures.
They are. They're caricatures, and it's like, if Breaking Bad is going to be more and more larger in life and more ungrounded in reality.
Yes.
And which is funny, because I think I've seen a lot of their episodes multiple times since then, and I didn't have that reaction. And then I actually met the
Moncada
brothers, and they were super cool, and talking about their experiences, and that's softened me up, I'm sure, a little bit more.
Yep. That's why we don't do interviews.
That's big. Damn straight. But there is, I have to say, I think part of it was the bad taste in my mouth coming from that plane crash directly into the cousins. I think the other way, I was prejudiced against big showy things. Honestly, I think the other thing that developing Tio, where they had that awesome flashback scene of him damn near drowning one of them, that gave them depth to their performance, and kind of like a behind the scenes look at like Tuco and how they were raised. They did continue to add layers to that family situation and finding out about that family and how they grew up and their code of honor that also has helped rehabilitate them. So they kind of did. The plane crash didn't help the cousins. Yeah. But I think ultimately where they took that storyline with the cartel has that make a lot more sense.
Yeah, I still think they're caricatures.
I think
to a large degree.
I suspect you're right. But do you think that 1 minute makes up for that?
Man, 1 minute is good. I don't feel like you needed caricatures to come after Hank. You could have had characters come after Hank. Could have had real, solid, actual characters go after him.
Huh. Yeah, I mean, I guess I was arguing that maybe they were. But that's
I know they do add layers to them, but I still view them as
like if Tuco had stayed in Mexico.
The shark skin suits, the pointed boots with the skulls on the front, that is very larger than life and flamboyant. And those things kind of take me out of this very grounded story in a man and his family. You know,
I'm just thinking of like, what would Tuco have turned out if he'd stayed off the meth, if he'd stayed in Mexico, if he'd stayed living in Don Eladio's mansion, you know, and we're in that culture where, you know, fucking shit is crazy in Mexico. Like, it's
Tuco?
No, I'm talking about the gangster culture down there. The drug cartel culture is kind of flamboyant, larger than life, and crazy. And
maybe so.
That's the other thing is I was,
yeah.
you know, I came off watching Breaking Bad right after I fell off the turnip truck of the Jehovah's Witness cult. And as I know more and more about the world, that stuff still, that yes, it's larger than life, and yes, they are a caricature, but it's a caricature I believe in a lot more than a random plane crash over the protagonist / antagonist's house.
Okay. Yeah, I get where you're coming from.
And I'm not saying that just to kiss Luisa and Daniel's ass.
No, I mean, I think you defended that pretty well.
Yeah.
I just still have a problem with these people being not as interesting or deep as they could have been.
Well,
I mean, every other character in the show is so well fleshed out.
Do you think that was
you just now have these Terminators coming in, and it didn't feel right. It didn't feel right within Breaking Bad.
They certainly didn't feel like they came out of Albuquerque, but they
didn't. No,
I know, and that's what my next question was. Is like, do you think that was a little bit of like
maybe that's why
Vince is like, you know what? This is my one chance to get away from Walt, to get away from Gus, to get away from the low-level guys that probably were too crazy to make it. Like, I want to have like a movie villain, a memorable villain, and I also know I'm going to dispense with them in the middle in favor of going with the Gus.
Yeah, but
it doesn't. You're right. It's like this. That doesn't make it all right.
No, it doesn't.
It's just like, yes, I can see all these things about the plane crash, but it still, for me, doesn't make it right. I feel you, because that's exactly my reaction, and I've seen a lot of those episodes since then.
Maybe if they had them talk, like they just didn't feel like real people.
The no talking thing was a little bit of that. It might have been just that. You're right, because it wasn't just a suit. It wasn't just that. It's just.
I mean, I don't look at Jesse and say that's an impossible character, because people dress like that. Yeah,
sure.
People dress like these twins. But the fact that they come in completely silent and they're only there to kill you.
The Terminator was a perfect example. They are the Latin American.
They're a Terminator without the punchlines, without the quips.
Sure.
And that's like, I don't know. It feels less real at that point.
Yeah.
I don't know. We'll talk about that a lot in season 3, I'm sure.
Sure. We'll have a lot to say. I would love to reach out to the brothers to get an interview with them, because they're super entertaining and they have a lot of funny behind the scenes stories. And I mean, also, like, just from a sheer ball standpoint, the stunt they did with that truck was, if you watch the making of that and talk to them, that was a lot more fraught with peril. And just, you know, they didn't have a plan B if they didn't get that one take. And that was also a Bryan Cranston directorial special.
It was.
So they hell of a job in that particular scene. So we'll see. I'm really interested to see how I continue to evolve with their characters, because I have turned it around a little bit, although.
And I haven't rewatched it.
Yeah.
So
that's your plane crash to Cousins?
Kinda, yeah.
Huh. Yeah. All right. Well, it'll be interesting to talk about when we get to it.
Yep.
Stay tuned.
Some unannounced time in the future.
Yep.
That's it. Thanks everyone for listening. We'll see you next time.
Yep. Bye-bye.